What's Your Work Fit is sponsored by Hudson Davis. Start your brand's marketing and communications journey today at hudsondaviscommunications.com. I'm Dan Smolin. I built a successful executive career in marketing and communications before becoming a top headhunter and founding my own executive search firm. Now get this, every day, mainstream media runs stories in which old school bosses and thought leaders frame your work and workplace issues in ways that are often divisive and unmeaningful. And that's just crazy. The time has come for you to answer the question, what's your work fit? So that your work and career fit who you are, how you want to live, and what you want your lasting contributions to be. What's your work fit? It answers your questions and tackles the issues that keep you up at night about advancing your career in this time of workplace revolution. So let's get started. Hey, good day, everyone. Dan Smolin here from What's Your Work Fit? I wanted to get right into this segment today. No asks about bringing in stuff and getting a free hat. I got an amazing guest today who you see on screen here, Jahmaal Marshall, who is a podcaster, a speaker, a consultant, and an expert on a lot of topic areas. His company is called Listen Then Speak. It's also the name of his podcast. I want to tell you a little bit about Jahmaal. He is a certified counselor, public speaker, podcast host, and mentor who addresses burnout, codependency, and people pleasing. Welcome, Jahmaal.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. I love that introduction. I think that's going to be a great segue into our conversation today, just about what's your work fit and kind of rebelling against the natural tone of what we've heard for so many years and what we've been taught. And even here as Westerners, like how we're taught to fit into society, how we're really not raised to think for ourselves and actually design, like, what is my work fit? Where do I fit into the workplace, into the career community, into entrepreneurship? So I love the fact that already the table is set for us to think outside the box and to also look for a path forward. So I'm excited.
I'm excited too. It's a beautiful day today. It's inspired me. I got a great guest. I want to get right to it. And as my viewers and listeners know, our topics come from our audience. And this one came from one of our younger viewers. His name is Bennett. Hello, Bennett. Thank you for posing your question today. So here we go. Bennett graduated from college this May, and he landed his first job soon after. He's working on a client services team at a co-located office in a major city. For reasons around the fact that he's new in the workplace, he didn't want me to tell too much about his identity, so that's fine. Okay, by all accounts, Bennett is doing really well on the job, and his boss seems to enjoy working with him. But Bennett almost always takes on more tasks and responsibility than he needs to, because it seems he likes to please the boss. And that's what happens. The boss wrote in his first review of Bennett, he's got a lot of grit. But here's the rub. Bennett's behavior and motivation doesn't make his teammates happy. And that cold splash of water to the face happened recently when one of Bennett's coworkers called him out for taking care of others, most notably the boss, and not himself. And it's true. Bennett seems to be working crazy long hours, not taking care of himself, and he is starting to dread the job, and he is thinking of finding a new one. So Bennett asks, how can I avoid being a people pleaser? Jahmaal, let's help our friend out here. How can he avoid being a people pleaser?
Great question, Bennett. And I love this visual and just even the on-ramp and how you gave me enough context. I want to also just share with your audience that I partner also with an app called Tiger Hall. And so we also do mentoring through that, just one-on-one hour sessions, at a certain cost, but also part of partnering with Tiger Hall is developing a bunch of content for them and for their audience of career people and of entrepreneurs and of folks who are in the workplace in similar positions as Bennett. And I did a whole series on people pleasing and a whole series on the psychology behind that. One thing I want Bennett to know is that people pleasers usually start off as parent pleasers. And so it's not something that just kind of comes out of nowhere that you want to just be this high achieving professionals. 98% of my clients are high achievers. They know excellence. They bring forth excellence. They come in and they make it happen. However, they put forth more than is necessary because of the psychology behind the way that they think. And I love the fact that Bennett's teammate and coworker called him out. I call that the divine and career intervention, because that's the way you actually disrupt the pattern of what is happening. And the fact that he's has this much output and people are starting to see it and it's actually rubbing them the wrong way. It's like, man, I'm doing everything. What else can I do right or wrong? I have all this grit. I have all this energy. However, Bennett's thinking is telling him that I actually need to bring more to the table than what is necessary, because he may not understand what he's responsible for. And I actually want to live in his shoes. When you're new to a job, a lot of times we call it the punt. Things get punted to you that are actually some responsibility. And so I want to speak very practically and pragmatically, and I don't want to take it too ethereal in the psychological mind. We have to understand, I call it, what I go over clients with is called the RACI. RACI. R, what are you responsible for? A, what are you accountable to? C, who are you collaborating with? And I, what are you just informed about? And so it's important to take an actual spreadsheet and find out for yourself, what is my responsibilities based on what? My KPIs. What did you onboard me on this job to do? That is where you build your case. Even as a new employee, you've already demonstrated that you're faithful. You've demonstrated you got the grit. You've demonstrated alignment with the company. So when you go before your boss, you always want to affirm the mission statement of the company, of the organization, that you're with them. But you also want to say, in order for me to stay here, in order for me to continue to do this job, it is very important that I do what you onboarded me for. And so your KPIs are, as we say in the urban community, your receipts. This is what you're bringing forth on paper. This is what you're responsible for. And what you're just informed about or just collaborating with another person on, again, I believe when I was a little kid, we used to watch WWF, which is now WWE Wrestling. This character named The Rock would say, know your role. And people would laugh, but it's important as employees and as career people, as we advance, that you know your role. And what is outside your role and your purview, you leave it to who is responsible for it. Because listen, Bennett, you'll be doing all this work, and guess what? Other people are benefiting from it and getting bonuses from the work that you're doing.
Wow. Okay. I don't even know where to start other than to say, let me validate the fact that I too was a people pleaser. I'm probably still am, but I'm trying to reform myself. And yes, it it evolved out of my home, and I did seek to please my parents. I was the youngest of three kids. You know, my middle brother was the agitator. My oldest brother was the trailblazer, and I was the pleaser. And why was I the pleaser? Well, my father used to come home from work really rattled. You know, he owned a family-owned business, and he had to deal with customer complaints all day long. And, you know, if he came home, my intuition said, I sense that I shouldn't poke the bear, so to speak. And so I would avoid anything that would upset him and go to things that would probably make him laugh. So, you know, I became a comedian in the household. Now, here's the problem. Unlike Bennett, I didn't have the intervention at work. And I didn't really realize I was a people pleaser until my daughter was born, and I put myself into psychotherapy. I put myself into psychotherapy because I wanted to hit the reset button on what I thought parenting was about. And as part of just the general psychotherapy process, the therapist profiled me, and you do this whole questionnaire and they, you know, Q&A and everything. And it was like, well, you're a pleaser. Okay. And then when I thought about it, I was like, wow, it's really wreaked havoc on parts of my career. What do you do?
You know, I love the fact that you give that type of background, and you took it back to what I was saying. You know, people pleasers usually start off as parent pleasers. It
Yeah.
starts at home. I'm also the youngest of four. And so the advisor, the problem solver, you know, the shoulder to lean on, the voice of reason in the family. And many times as kids and maybe teenagers and early young adults, we take pride in that. You know,
Mhm.
it's a part of that that feeds our ego. And then we realize that, wait a minute, I'm actually wearing myself out. I'm potentially playing surrogate spouse here to one of my parents, or maybe both. um, I'm not processing some of the trauma, you know, that's in my mind to actually address these issues. And then we take that into our career and we wonder, why is my career suffering when I'm actually putting out every fire? Because every fire is not your responsibility. And we don't establish boundaries because we've learned that fear is the motivator. Anytime there's parent pleasing and people pleasing, fear is a motivator, and the fear of rejection is deep at the root, and it has to be addressed. And when it's addressed properly, and we learn how to advocate for ourselves with grace and with tact and with wisdom, then
Mm.
we understand that we leave the results and even the reactions of how people react to our boundaries with them. Your reaction is not my responsibility. The boundary is actually for me. It's for you to learn to respect.
So I want to bring up Adriana's comment. Adriana's in Spain, one of my dear friends, and she wasn't going to be able to make the show today, but she wanted me to ask you some questions. And so there are many factors why someone becomes a people pleaser: fear of losing one's job, avoiding conflict, which is something you just brought up. In either case, it's better to say no than to be a people pleaser. What do you think of that?
It is better to say no, but sometimes when you people say to know better is to do better, and I like
Mm.
to challenge that
Okay.
quote that we find so popular. To believe better is to do better. I'm going to give a bit of a crude analogy, so I just want you guys to hang with me. Um, any man who's married to a beautiful woman can know that, okay, I don't want to step out on this marriage. I want to maintain this union that God has brought us into. He knows better.
Yeah.
But if he does not believe that, in a weak moment, in a moment of high stress, on a business trip, anything could happen with another woman, a secretary, with any scenarios. We're not going to go too far into that. So again, a lot of us know better, but to believe better is where we do better. So yes, it's better to say no. We may know that it's better to say no, but if our non the outstanding pattern in our mind is saying that no is met with rejection, we won't say no, and we'll stay in that fear of avoiding conflict and that fear of losing a job or staying in a place where we never advocate and challenge the status quo. And that's why it's important to get to the root of what we think, so that way we challenge the pattern of what we believe, which will inevitably affect how we behave. I hope that makes sense.
I think it does. Got a lot of comments today, Jamal. So I want to get through most of them. My dear friend Helena wrote, "I wonder about people pleasing. Is it really altruistic?" That was an interesting question. Or is at least some of it about the fear of not delivering what the boss wants and falling short of expectations? Or is there a little bit of that's about ego, wanting the validation and affirmation? So let's talk about altruism. Is that even, does that factor in to some people, especially if they are empathic? What are your thoughts?
I love that question from Helena, and I want to address that as holistically as I'm able to in this short time.
Okay.
I think a lot of times we've become, especially in the last 3 years, very polarized, just as people, as individuals, and as a society. And so we forget that both and can be true at the same time. And
Ah.
so all three factors in her questions can be true at the same time based on the person and based on their psychological makeup and based on their background. And so for empaths, if you've seen some of my content lately, you know, I like to do things in series, and I've kind of run a series on empaths. And for the empathic person, it's just their nature and their second nature to be a giver. It's their second nature. They don't have to take the courses on high EQ. They already have the high EQ. They're
Mm.
born with that emotional intelligence to understand I can put myself in another person's shoes. However, your high EQ can be the bane of your existence because you understand so much about how other people are feeling. You feel the desire and the need to address all the feelings in the room. I tell people, anybody who may be a fan of the X-Men, and I mean, I grew up in a time in the early 80s where the X-Men was like the comic book to read. I say shamefully, as a guy, I can put Jean Grey to shame. I know how everybody's feeling at one time, and I wish that I didn't. And because of that deep compassion, and I have within my body and mind and psyche enough feminine energy to enter into that need, every need is not mine to resolve. And so even as when you come into your career, obviously you want to make your boss look good. You want to make the team look good, but you have to be aware of your limited capacity. And I'm speaking to the gals and the guys here. We have limited capacity. And some people say, no, I'm going to go get her. I'm a high achiever. I'm a high performer. Yeah, you've been performing and you're running yourself into a brick wall.
One of my dear friends here in the Washington area is Edith Richards, and she is an expert on EQ. And so we've talked a lot about this and about intuition and so forth. And I don't know how to, I don't know that I'm an empath, but I am highly intuitive. I can read energy. I had a situation recently where my wife and I were out for dinner with some people, and a topic got brought up, and I'm not really involved in the conversation. I'm sort of sitting back and watching the nonverbals as they unfold. And this one person, when this one comment was made that they got really threatened by, got deer in the headlights and looked straight forward and gave nobody any eye contact. And when Marcia and I were in the car driving home, I said, "Did you see that?" And she said, "Did you see what?" And I played it back to her, and she went, "Whoa, you picked up on that?" I said, "Yeah, because I wasn't talking. I was sitting back, and I was just letting the energy around me speak." So, is there a difference between intuition and being an empath, being an intuitive versus being an empath in your mind?
I think there are some differences, but there's also some overlap. You know, empaths, I think by nature are very intuitive.
Yeah.
And there's some people who have great intuition, even apart from any training or any specialties or anything like that. I'm very intuitive, but I can say this, sometimes I wish I wasn't, because you see those things and you see what we counselors call it the halo data, you know, a person's expressions, their body language, what they give off. And you're like, man, I wish I could help them, but you can't help everyone. And a lot of times you'll take on battles that are not yours to fight. I recently did a post about, you know, you can advance in your career and in your business when you stop being everyone's umbrella. You know, some people are in storms that they've created for themselves. And so one thing about intuition is it's good is it'll give you the discernment to understand, like, is this a pattern with this person? And is this an issue that and a matter that they need to solve? Because the thing about empaths is that they want to jump in and be the SJW, if I can use that for lack of better rhetoric, the social justice warrior or the justice person for everyone. And it's like, that's not your fight. You know, one thing you'll hear in the urban community is like, bro, that's not even my battle.
Yeah.
Not my battle to fight.
All right. Well, that's some solid truth right there. Yeah, I'm an ENTP if anybody's interested. Me and Barack, we're both ENTPs. So if you want to look up what I'm about, you can just go to Myers-Briggs and look up ENTP and see what that's about. All right, I want to get to Randy. Randy's a fan of the show, and she brings up the work of Dr. Judith Orloff, who I'm guessing maybe you're familiar with, a psychotherapist who's studies empaths. And Randy writes, something I learned from one of my books that I've read by Dr. Judith Orloff is this: no. It's a complete sentence. No. And she said it's changed her life. In your mind, is that appropriate, or can that be too brusque in a situation?
I would say for the people pleaser and those who are listening to this, that may sound very brash. It may sound very curt. But that actually is a game changer if you learn how to apply it. See, a lot of times you got to think this is social media. This podcast is going to go out. People are watching this now. These things sound good in the moment, but when it's tested, you know, the benefit comes from whether you believe it or not. And I love the fact that it says right here, no is a complete sentence. I tell my clients, no is a sacred word. No is a holy word. If you understand that you don't have to explain your no. The moment you explain your no, it loses authority.
It loses authority. It also lessens your value proposition. You know, when I was an independent contractor as a recruiter, I didn't get to say no very often, but I did. And when I got pushback, it was like, hey, this is my business. I can't do everything everybody wants. What it was, I said no to a client who wanted me to help him place people in his subprime mortgage company. Well, I don't deal with anything predatory. That's my brand. I have to live with myself. My no was I draw a line. I'm willing to help people to a certain point, but I will draw a line at something that I think is predatory. The other thing was he came back to me with payday loans, and I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? No way. No. So I learned no later on in life, but it was, very, very powerful indeed. So what do we what do we counsel young people who are like Bennett getting out of school right now, who are, they're happy puppies and they want to, it's like the first day of middle school. They want to be all bright and shiny and happy and make the teacher happy. And I suppose to a certain extent that's good because maybe that'll open them up to experiences. But are there trigger points that they need to be familiar with in their early workplace experiences, Jahmaal, that we need to make them aware of so that if something were to come up, situational, they could say, boss, I really appreciate the ask and I really would love to help you, but I'm at the end of my bandwidth right now. I don't think I can help you. If I take this on, it's going to lessen the impact of all the other work that I'm trying to do for you. Do you have any pearls of wisdom for young people watching today who were like, yeah, I've been told I'm a people pleaser and I've just got to be mindful of it when I start my career? What are your thoughts?
Dan, that's a solid question, and I'm going to give some background information, especially for those who are young, because that young energy, especially for interns, fellows, new employees, you've been brought on as the coordinator or the manager. Like you're young and you've already got direct reports. You've proven yourself that much.
Yeah.
I really want to share with you that your young energy and your zeal is the thing that actually keeps the company going. Because you don't often challenge the status quo,
Right.
and you have enough young energy in a sense to burn the candle at ends that don't exist. You guys can look at my face and say, I wonder how old he is. I'm almost 40. I just happen to look pretty.
Hey man, you do look pretty. You look good, man.
Thanks, man. You're too kind. But I can say I started my career as an 18-year-old here in DC at the Department of Justice off the Senate side of the Capitol as just a starry-eyed intern that came in and worked their way through the ladder for 6 years in the government. And of course, I wanted to do everything.
Yeah.
And I was even given, sometimes those compliments you're given can actually take you down a road that wears you out. There was a guy who before me, a student worker, Ryan, who I heard would ask them why. And when I was asked to do something, I just did it. I didn't question. And they said, man, we just noticed you don't question why. You actually do it and you do the work and you stay late. And of course, in me, for someone who already had some trauma, as a young man, from my own childhood, I was just like, yes, this is the way to go. But it got to the point where I was saying yes to everything and I wasn't questioning anything. And I had to actually go back, one to, again, the KPIs, the very thing of this is why you're here. This is what we onboarded you for, to actually make a case for my limited capacity to say yes to everything. And then to begin, when you advocate for yourself, but you actually do it with paper. And going back to what we said earlier, the receipts. This is what you onboarded me for. I'd already proven, obviously, that I was mission minded. And so they didn't have to question that. And I wanted to continue as from a sustainable path to move the mission of this company forward. But I cannot do that with my hand dipped in every pot. Give specific examples. Again, with certain upper level managers, they only respond to numbers. So you got to make your problem their problem. One of the ways you do that is you can even highlight some things in the company of where there's high turnover, where there are gaps. So you may have to do your research as a young person. Use some of that young energy to do some research on some of the failings, even within the company. And there's been high turnover in certain departments because their employees are burnt out. You don't want to burn out. And so if you don't want to burn out, present that case to them. And also the case that there is nearly $6,000 to $12,000 to onboard a new employee. So that's also revenue. They're going to need more revenue streams. Plus, Let's add to that, there's institutional knowledge walking out the door wherever there's burnout and high turnover. And so when you present these types of cases to them based on the research and how your organization or team works, then your problem becomes their problem. And you're advocating, but then they become your advocate. So it's a win-win. It's what Covey calls the win-win. I'm actually dropping all this for free, y'all. but I want you guys to actually, if you don't apply it, you're not going to benefit from it. But if you won't advocate and begin that journey until you actually get to the root of what you think. That's what I work with people on, to actually get them to the place where they're willing to advocate. Because if fear is a motivator, you'll continue to stay in those same circles and toxic patterns. Patterns remain until they're disrupted.
I want to bring up just a little why to this discussion, which is, playing the people pleaser at work can lead to physical and emotional burnout, loss of focus on career and life goals. And that's just 2 bullet points. This is something from an article on cnbc.com. But people pleasing, sorry about that. Didn't mean to bang the microphone. People pleasing is also impacting something you just brought up, which I'll call higher talent ROI, which is to say, and you threw out some statistics, $6,000 to $12,000 to onboard a new employee. Some places it's a lot more, but the loss of an institutional knowledge giver, huge. Whatever age that person might be, they might be highly specialized. Mm-hmm. The longer that a person remains happy on the job, that means a longer lifetime value. So all these things are not costs, they are investments. And this is a frame shift that I'm trying to do, and I'm sure you're trying to do as well with your clients, which is to say, people are investable. So if you invest in them well, you do your homework well, and oh, by the way, a great leader will pick up on somebody's seeming obsequiousness to be a people pleaser and say, dude, I feel you. It's okay, but let's give Joe here that stack of work to do. You got a lot on your plate. I don't want you burned out. I want you to enjoy the weekend. That to me is true leadership. And that kind of an emotional framing, positive framing, I think is what we want to see leaders do now, so that when somebody sees a people pleaser come on board, they're ready to redirect them positively so that they don't burn out, so that they don't get misdirected and lead themselves to peril and maybe a short tenure on the job.
Dennis, you just said a mouthful, because not only did you talk about the side of the employee, but you also talked about the attitude of the manager. Yeah. And part of my work as a consultant is actually going into teams. So if anybody's listening to this, like with the team, is also getting the manager to learn how to manage themselves, because you're going to manage different types of direct reports. I think we all would want an avatar direct report, but if you have a team of more than 2 or 3 people, you can't expect they're all going to have the same personality and the same psychology and the same background. We have to remember that you bring yourself, your family history, your belief systems, your addictions, if you have them, all of those different dynamics you still bring through the door with you. And also you take the NT out of management. And what do you have? Manage me. It's important for us to learn how to manage ourselves. So when we have direct reports and we get different people coming through the door, we make sure we move the team forward and we actually can make that investment. Because if you are, and who's going to admit to this, being a toxic manager, you exploit the people pleaser just to keep the revenue stream, or what you think is a revenue stream, until they burn out and walk out the door. Then you end up with the same cycle and the same problem. How many times do we see this in the workplace? And then we see the typical talent acquisition HR employee survey that everybody participates in, but then nothing changes. Be the change, but it starts here. Anyone can even listen to this podcast between you and I today. If you don't disrupt the pattern of what you're thinking, you're not going to disrupt the pattern of your beliefs, and you're not going to disrupt the pattern of your behavior. That goes for all of us.
You know, we have members of the audience who are Gen Z, including my 22-year-old daughter who's still in college. And I think most of them feel besieged. They're so freaked out about pivoting from graduation to entry-level work. And I understand it. I understand it. You know, throughout their lives, and I hope, Darren, you don't think that mom and I did this to you, but we tried really hard not to be puppet masters, if you will, and helicopter parents. We tried to let you figure out your own path. But unfortunately, her generation has been in threat mode from the time they were in diapers. I mean, when my daughter was a baby, and you'll remember this, we had the Beltway sniper going on around DC. So my daughter's known nothing but threat mode her entire life. Going into a work situation, uh, I would imagine a lot of managers are dealing with some aspect of this in their people and going like, I don't know what the heck to do. I want to offer a different frame, which is this is a really smart generation. They know how to adapt. Give them the tools to learn how to overcome being a people pleaser. Further, give them the tools to learn how to be intentional leaders in their own right. We're going to learn a lot from these folks, you know?
Mm-hmm. That is so true, man. Like, I love what you said about putting the tools in their hands. And also, I'm going to go a little further, and I think you even mean to say this. Make the investment in the mental health and wellness of your employees. The head, I say this often in all my content, the mind is a control tower to the body. I've already coined that in copyright that, by the
Oh,
way.
I like that.
If your headspace is right and your heart space is right, you're going to be a Pied Piper for that job and that organization. You got yourself a winner when you invest. I mean, and I'm not talking about like, listen, and you've seen this in my content. Today, everyone is a coach. Post 2020, every slug on the sidewalk is a coach. But there's some of us who've been doing this 10 plus years who actually understand human behavior enough to go into a team and actually change dynamics because we do understand human behavior. We understand how the mind works and the rhythms of the heart, and also neuroplasticity. It takes time. It's not a one and done thing. It's not an overnight thing. And also for managers, take the time for yourself so that when you have these Gen Z and later and millennial, Gen X reports coming, you understand how to manage them in a way that causes them to thrive. Thrivers will stay. Survivals will actually use their break time to look for another job.
That's right. And there goes the investment down the toilet. Jahmaal Marshall, you're a gift. You're an absolute gift. When I met you, I just knew I had to get you on this podcast because what you were saying really resonated with me, and I think the audience gets that because you've really you're showing us all how to overcome our worst selves to be our best selves. And thank you for everything. I before I ask you our one last question, I want to give you the opportunity to share with our viewers and listeners where you're at on social media so that they can follow you, watch your amazing videos, and perhaps have a conversation with you offline. Where would they find you?
Awesome. One of the easiest places to find me is LinkedIn. I'm literally the only Jahmaal that spells my name this way on LinkedIn. So as soon as you type in Jahmaal, there I am. And you can get linked into me there. Under there is the appointment link to my Calendly if you want to meet me one-on-one. If you do have a team and you need more of a consulting, there's also, you can just come into my calendar, come into my DMs, and I'll shoot you that link as well. And my website is www.listenthenspeak.com. And it actually has all the different links, whether it's consulting or whether it's counseling. And you can find my podcast at Listen Then Speak on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeart, Amazon, wherever podcasts are distributed. We're all over the place. But the easiest way to come in and have a conversation with me is to find me on LinkedIn and also on Google as well. It's my name is pretty uncommon, so it's pretty easy to find me and to get a hold of me. And if you heard something that resonated with you today and you say, you know what, he's talking to me, I feel like this guy has been in my journal walking around and he has the experience to actually get me some results, then you know where to find me. Like I was told once by someone in marketing, you should actually say that you're a coach. And I'm like, I'm not a coach. I am a counselor. I have training in coaching, but I like to get down to the root. I really believe root causes are important. There's nothing wrong with coaching. There are amazing coaches and high performance people who are in the market today. but I think rooted issues are not being addressed. And there is even an ancient writing that says, in the multitude of counselors, there's safety. So I'm gonna give you guys a little example before we close out.
Oh, yeah.
I 3 months ago was going to the gym regularly. I've lost over 50 pounds since February, had a really bad knee injury. But then I noticed I was having some problems with my left foot. And so I went to the ER. They referred me to a physical therapist that I went to diligently 3 times a week. My foot swelled up so much I had to actually use a different shoe. And I finally, you know how DC insurance works. You can't do so multiple things at a time unless you come out of pocket. I was able to go see my podiatrist, who was a foot doctor. And he said, I want you to stop going to physical therapy immediately. And I was like, what for? This is a good thing. He says, you have a stress fracture in your foot. He says, so the more that they massage, the more they hook electrodes, the more they give you all these exercises, your foot is actually getting worse and it's not going to get better. And he actually took a whole diagram and showed me everything. He put me on 6 weeks of recovery. And I can tell you in 3 weeks, boom, I've been nearly completely healed of the stress fracture. So I say that to say, in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. I know you guys are wanting any type of career coach to come in and tell you stuff. And the market is so saturated with everyone using ChatGPT, just calling themselves a coach.
Yeah.
But if you really want somebody who's going to get to the root, who understands human behavior and who understands where you've been, who've been there themselves, sometimes life experience can be a great teacher. I just want to make myself available for anyone who needs to find me and reach out to me. In the multitude of counselors, you can do a good thing. Physical therapy is a good thing, and it actually be worse for you. So you can be doing a thing that any career coach or someone has told you to do and make matters worse until you find someone that can actually address the root causes within you.
Ugh. Well, you don't know this. My wife was on workers' comp for about 6 months, still is. And what you just described with physical therapy is her story. So, right on. Wow. I can't believe it. All right. We're running out of time here. I want to get to our question, which is, what's your work fit, Jahmaal? What attribute, condition, experience, place, or state of mind makes work a wonderful part of a day doing other wonderful things and not the all-consuming time suck of a day? What's your work fit?
Man, that's a broad question, bro.
Yeah.
My work fit, man, obviously we operate best on routine, even the most amiable and most type B of us. My work fit, because I love what I do,
Yeah.
is giving myself the space, because I run my own business, in the morning where I'm not accessible, so that way I can go into beast mode, with content creation. I love creating content because the content is what draws in the clients.
Yeah.
And also I love seeing teams and people one-on-one. When I see people get results, that's a win for me. I love seeing, and it's hard work. I'm not out here as somebody says, hey, just do my digital product and in 5 steps, that is BS. I want to shatter that. So my work fit is actually to shatter what you see in the greater market, and to see people get real sustainable results, and actually to know my own limited bandwidth. When I've had enough and when I'm hitting a wall, it's time for vacation. So clientele teams, this is when you don't have access, and to keep that access shut off so that I can fill my cup and replenish my cup.
Well, my cup runneth over earlier this month. I'm taking a couple of weeks off, and as my audience will soon find out, we'll be back after Labor Day. Jahmaal Marshall, you are an absolute gift. I hope we can get you back on What's Your Work Fit at a future opportunity. Can we do that?
For sure. You have my word. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.